Okay, the hive's built now, or put together. Although I haven't finished it with the roof and everything, I'm just going to show while the roof's off how I've come and why I've come to this shape, size and design. It's basically so that it's easy to operate. I used to keep bees, but I don't keep them for honey. I just keep them as a pollinator. Therefore, you know, it's nice to have a hive that you can put the bees in, and then basically check it once in the spring, summer, and then once before putting them away at winter. So the idea has all come about that we have mimic a tree. We have put in a symbiotic sump, i.e. a sump with all the detritus you get out of a dead tree or from a forest floor. Now, to protect the hive, I make this little Corex tray. Now it's just basically Corex from wicks, and that's, you know, it stops the wood getting saturated if it does get damp, but you know, it helps keep the environment in the beehive, you know, at the bees' choice. Now this goes in the bottom as so, and what I'm going to do with every hive I produce, I'm going to make sure, well, I'm going to, when I pack them, I'm going to put a piece of Corex under the roof in the box, so if you want to make a symbiotic sump, biological sump, you can use the Corex board that I've put in. I will trim it and cut it so it's ready to fold, but you'll have to fold it and staple it so that it's, you know, the right shape. So what happens then is, if you're using, the idea is this fits all frame sizes. Now the first one is, if you want to use Bill Summers's zest frame, that sits just over the sump like that, so you fill the sump with detritus, you know, get loads of the basically what's under trees, rake it together as it is and put it in, and level it all the way along at that rate. Then you've got your symbiotic sump. Now what we do when we use the 14 by 12 frame, which is basically down to here, what we do then is, I tend to leave that area open, and I've found that bees tend to build the comb on a 14 by 12, especially if you use a 14 by 12 without foundation, just a strip of foundation across the top. The bees will build the comb in that shape. So I'm never bothered if they build between there and there and fill it up. That's entirely up to them. But what I have done with these hives, just to make sense of it all, I have made a dummy floor, and the dummy floor goes in. And if you don't want to use the sump and you just want to use the hive with a 14 by 12, or even if you're not interested with a 14 by 12 and you want it with just ordinary brood, it will take 24 broods frames, the deep brood frame as they call it, and then the 14 by 12 of course is here. And if the bees want to build underneath, just let them. So I recommend about an inch of, 3/4 of an inch to an inch of foundation in there, and let them build the comb in. But you know, it's every beekeeper has a choice. But I do believe that having these edges gives the bees well, stops the bees building to the side of your hive. Now I've had warrays and we ended up making frames for the warrays, so you know, to save them cross bracing and everything, you just need to give them a starter. So if you have a starter strip, then when you replace a frame at a time, if you just open the hive to take one of these out that's got honey on it, then you can just take it away, replace it, and all's good. The other thing is using this, with this you get 24 of these top bars, which I recommend you screw to the frame. Now you'll see they're slightly wider than the standard frame, and that is because I read up on David Cushman, and I worked out when I first had bees, when I first was introduced to bees, I then decided that I started measuring comb with a vernier. From an engineering point, I've always been an engineer, and from an engineering point I measured the comb, and the comb works out that the bees need 38 millimeters, not 36, and Dave Cushman says the same thing. So I found that they were always tight, and they need that extra room. So all my top bars are 38 millimeters. So I supply with every hive 24 of these. I supply 24 of these with every hive, because I like it that when you open a hive, you can open the top and there is no bees. And what happens with this is, because you screw these I supply, you screw them to the top of your standard frame, or you screw them to the top of the zest frame. Now on the zest I saw the lugs off at each end at the 9mm bee space, which is at the end. You can see at the end of the angle, I saw that off, and it drops down flush. And then when you've got all of them in, you open the hive and there is no bees here, which is great. And then if you decided to just take honey, you just pull one out, put another one in, and go off with one. But as I say, I never took honey, so you know that wasn't a problem. The other thing is that with the hive, this design, the whole idea with this was, when it was complete, with all its top bars, that if anybody wanted, they could then on top, by cutting 2 holes, what I recommend is you cut 2 holes in this. If you put this, I'll move this to the centre to make it make sense. If this is the centre, because you always build your hive from the centre, I'll cut 2. You'll get, in every kit you'll get 2 basically top bars to screw onto your ordinary frames, with a hole like that. That enables you, for those that have got nationals and WBCs, that enables you to put your super inside, and then the bees will come up through this hole. Put if you want, put a piece of queen excluder on. Put a queen excluder on. If you've got, most people have a load of kit, so the idea is you just put your queen excluder on, the wrong way. Put your queen excluder on like that. You have your hole underneath, and then the bees bring in honey. We'll put honey in your super. You just put an ordinary crown board on here, put your super frames in, and yeah, great, because then what happens is all your honey here that you're going to steal, if you like, this is the honey for you. The honey that they build on the big frames is for them in the winter. So that's the way I always do everything, and that principle allows the bees to make sure they've got enough to get through winter. Now this takes 24 of these top bars, and then with each kit you get this dummy floor. Now this dummy floor is designed to just float inside and fits perfectly inside the hive, and then drops down, so that if you didn't want this, if you didn't want a deep hive, I know people say, oh, we'll make a short one, but then it comes into another engineering setup and another lot of parts. Now the idea with this one was one hive does all. Now if it's not for you, then obviously, you know, I'll probably look at doing a short version so it just fits the 14 by 12 frame. But with this hive now, if you put the floating floor in, if you put this floating floor in like this, it just now so now you've got, if you don't want a sump, you've now got that floor with an airspace underneath, which is a very good insulative, and then you just put your 14 by 12s on top of that. This is just an ordinary brood. I've ordered some off Simon the beekeeper. They should be here today, so I'll take some pictures later and a bit more of a description with a 14 by 12 in, but I still recommend that you leave that space underneath. Now and with each one of these you get, with each kit you get this, you get a dummy board. Now the dummy board is designed for the full depth of the hive, so if you're doing any other size, you just saw the distance, whatever that measurement is from there to there, you saw it off the bottom, then you've got a dummy board. But these dummy boards are done so that they do the full hive, and then depending on where you have your floor, you can just space the floor higher and higher. If you don't want a gap under your 14 by 12 frame, then you just put some, if you like, a brick at each end and float that way and put the board on top. But that base board just floats, and you can lift it up and down and put it where you want. Now that's why they're not, the hives aren't drilled for entrances, because everybody has a different preference to entrance. If it's me, I always have the entrance high because the bees like to be high and they're also sheltered. So I would put my spinner up here and cut a hole under the ledge here so they're protected. Now what kind of spinner you use is entirely up to you, but these ones have a, I've been to my hives at one time when I had bees, and I had these beautiful chrome entrances, but I came one day and there was so many bees outside, then I found that they couldn't get through that gap because it wasn't wide enough. Then the yellow ones, there wasn't enough room to allow them in, and that's a 4.6, 4.7 gap, and that wouldn't allow enough bees in, and because I was trying to keep the queen in, then the bees couldn't get in because they were a slightly bigger bee than we'd had previously. So I've always gone for these black ones. Well, they do them in black or white, and that's a 4.5mm gap on the bee excluder, and then you just have it around there. Now, depending where your floor is, obviously you will have to decide and drill accordingly. And then what I do is I put a landing board on each, a landing board on the flat when it's open, and a landing board on the bee excluder, and they're screwed in from the back. Now I can do that, but that'll be listed as a separate thing. But each hive will come with a black spinner, and then you decide where you drill your 1.5 or 2-inch hole to come through. In each package I have to use 50mm insulation, polystyrene insulation, to pack each box. So when you take it out of the box, look after it, because that will go in between this leg and that leg. And then what we do is we just put polystyrene on there, on the face, with 2 screws and washers just to hold it on. And then where you put your entrance, you obviously have a longer screw on your entrance, but you put a piece of plastic waste tube so that the bees don't eat the polystyrene, and that goes straight through onto the inside of the hive. So that solves all your problems there. Yeah, so the hive was, taking a lot of thought to enable us to get everything to fit. So you can have zest frames, you can have 14x12s, or you can have just this standard one, and just pick the floor up to the height you want underneath. But I always find that with a 14x12, the bees tend to like that little bit of extra size, so that they can build their comb like that. Now, having the sides on the frames is very important, because bees don't like, what I found is if these rock for some reason, or the hive rocks and they rock, the bees will brace it. And then they'll brace it to the side. But with these legs, they brace to the leg, and then you get that beautiful bee shape there, and you get clean comb so you can eat it. The problem is with all this foundation you buy, you haven't a clue what's in it, and that's what it brings. That comes to the point of, why do I use beech ply? Well, I use beech ply because all beehives have a contaminant of wood of some sort in, whether it's ordinary plywood for your crown boards, your dummy boards, and all that kind of thing. So if you're worried about the plywood effect on the bees, I would just polish the inside with beeswax. Run beeswax all over your finish inside, completely polish it, spray it with beeswax polish, and polish it. But the outside must be painted, because even though this is high quality ply with massive layers, water will get in if you don't treat it. Now, on all the ones that are in production, we're radiusing all the corners, because apparently a square corner allows more ingress of water. So we're radiusing all the corners, and then everything must be painted. You know, if you want to fill these holes, they don't go through into, you can see they don't go through onto the inside, but you know, if you want to fill them with a mastic or something, by all means do, but I strongly recommend that you paint them. The more treatment, the more that you look after it when you build it, the longer it will last you. But I mean, it shouldn't give up if all the edges are sealed. And inside, these here, if you, as I say, wax, beeswax all your edges inside, so you basically seal them from water absorption. I think that's about it really. But as I say, you can put a super inside. The only supers it won't take are the polystyrene ones, unless you trim the front and the back off. So if you have got polystyrene ones, you'll just have to, where the reliefs are, I'll show you on this one, where the reliefs are, you just have to reduce them, and you can do that easily with a bandsaw, a circular saw. Yeah, so what you do is you basically cut off from there, you cut that off flush, so then it will, just on the one side, you will see, if you cut these lugs off all the way across here, just take ½ an inch off each side. Take the strengthening panels off, because you won't need the strengthening panels on, and then it will just drop in. You don't need to do the sides, just depending on which way you have it, warm ways or cold ways. So that covers that. So you can use your polystyrene bits inside it. But as I say, so you'll get insulation in the package for packaging, which you can use for front and back, and then on the ends, in the winter you'll bring the colony down. If you've got 14 by 12, you're probably bringing it down to 14 frames, and then you'll have your dummy boards, and then behind your dummy boards you'll put all your old frames, which gives you an air gap, here, which you can easily put another piece, press another piece, just stand a piece of polystyrene in, to stop the coal coming through the side. But from my point of view, I think because these high density polystyrene hives, originally when they were soft, they had quite an insulative value, but now they're rock hard. They're probably only as good as a WBC or a thick cedar national. So you know, you may as well just put your polystyrene on the outside, paint it whatever colour you want, a pipe through for your entrance so the bees don't eat into it, and yeah, you've got very, very high, well, the insulation factor then is quite good. Anyway, I'll stop rabbiting on until I do another video when I show you fitting the roof. Okay.